และในลำดับถัดไปนะคะขอเรียนเชิญทุกท่านเข้าสู่ช่วงของการเสวนาค่ะซึ่งต่อไปนะคะจะขอดำเนินรายการเป็นภาษาอังกฤษค่ะหากท่านใดต้องการใช้หูฟังแปลภาษาสามารถนำสำเนาบัตรประชาชนไปแลกได้นะคะที่ตรงบริเวณจุดลงทะเบียนชั้น 7 ค่ะ Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to begin our first panel discussion today. The first topic is embracing the financial innovations. May I now invite our first panelist, Mr. Sundeep Gantori, Equity Analyst from UBS Wealth Management, to come to the stage, please. May I now invite our second panelist, Mr. Philip Enness, Global Lead Infrastructure from IBM, to come to the stage, please. And last but not least, may I now invite our moderator, Ms. Ajari Supirod, Director of FinTech Department from the Securities and Exchange Commission Thailand. And may I leave the stage to Ms. Ajari. สวัสดีทุกท่านเป็นทางการนะคะคือเคยมาดูคอนเสิร์ตที่นี่นะคะวันนี้ได้ฝันที่เป็นจริงนะคะได้ขึ้นมายืนบนสเตจนี้ก็เดี๋ยวจะขออนุญาตปรับบทเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะแต่ว่า along the way เดี๋ยวจะพยายามสรุปไปด้วยนะคะว่าkey points ที่แต่ละท่านเป็นยังไงนะคะ Okay so thank you again for joining our panel today we are very excited to have both of you here so as a warm-up question can you please introduce yourself a bit and tell us more what your company is currently doing. Thank you. I'll start with Sundeep, please.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are having a great time. My name is Sundeep Gantori. I'm an Executive Director and Equity Analyst within the Wealth Management Office, part of the Chief Investment Office. My job is basically to research companies and recommend stocks. I've been with the bank for more than 10 years, covering technology sector globally, which includes basically everything from software, services, semiconductors, hardware. And over the past 3 to 4 years, I've been also covering Asia ex-Japan equities, which includes the regional equities. My key role is on top of recommending stocks, also generate thought leadership ideas and research. So over the past 10 years, I've published many research reports for UBS on topics from like AI, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, cyber security, and also many reports on smartphones, how it's changing the digital landscape. I mean, as far as my bank goes, I'm obviously happy to share more details later, but we have definitely identified FinTech as a key driver in terms of changing or in terms of driving the future of the bank. Actually, I was in Hong Kong yesterday. We did a tech CEO summit, and there was an interesting quote from our CEO, Asian CEO, and what she was telling is that I think the biggest competitor to us as a bank is not a bank, but a tech company.
All right. Okay, please.
Philip Enness, I'm the global lead for market infrastructure in IBM. Historically, I was a trader, so I came from an investment banking background for 17 years. I've since worked for IBM. Typically, I wouldn't say much about IBM as an organisation because historically people have understood who IBM were and what they stood for. But the company's been reinventing itself over the last few years, and it's a very different company to the one I joined, and a very different company to the one that I experienced only a few years ago. The rationale for that, and Sundeep, who covers IBM, will be able to tell you there's significant competitive pressures out there, and we are living, eating and breathing the innovation and FinTech challenge ourselves as a leading technology company. So we've had to reinvent ourselves around some of the emerging technologies, cognitive, analytics, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity have all become imperatives for IBM to focus on. And in that, we've also reorganized ourselves in a much more agile way. So we've embraced design thinking. We've created innovative agile development environments, such as the garage environments that we have in New York, London, Singapore, and Japan, and extending those globally over time. So we're a very different company, trying to be more agile, more innovative, and embracing the emerging FinTech companies that are there in the marketplace.
Okay, so before going into further details about all the cool initiatives that both companies are currently exploring, I'm just wondering if there are any key trends that you guys are seeing emerging around this time, particularly in financial services or capital market related areas. So if you could kindly share briefly on that, please.
Sure. So as part of my technology coverage, I look at how banks spend on IT. So maybe to set the stage, globally, companies spend around 4 to 5% of their revenues on IT expenditure. With banks, actually, it's around 9%. So banks historically have spent more on technology. But the problem with banks or security companies or financial companies in general is that around 2/3 of their spending is actually on maintenance. I mean, you are stuck with legacy systems, and a lot of these legacy systems need to be maintained. So instead of spending your dollars on the latest innovative projects, actually you're either spending on salaries of a big IT department or also on legacy technologies.
Right.
Having said that, it's changing in the last 3 to 4 years. We have seen increasing disruption coming from the technology companies to the financial companies. Just to share some facts, globally, if I see the markets, the indexing, whether it's in US or in Asia, technology is the largest index. So investors are actually rewarding tech companies, and financial companies are actually losing in terms of their weight and also in terms of their profitability. So companies have realized that they need to reinvent themselves. So what I can see, and I'm not talking about my bank or UBS, but in general, I think companies have realized that they need to jump on this technology bandwagon. So trends, what I can clearly see is AI is one priority across every financial company today. Blockchain, quite interesting, still early days, but I think it could create again major disruption. On top of that, it's interesting to see that even some of the, not legacy technologies, but some of the old technologies like cloud transition is still happening at a slower pace, but that should accelerate. We are also seeing companies seeking or looking into other areas like payments, online payments, could be leveraging blockchain or also other ways. So companies in general are actually becoming smart. So they are not really increasing their IT spend on banks. That's on technology. It still remains at 9%, but I think they're becoming a bit smart, moving from the legacy technologies to digital technologies. So it's really happening. Mobile apps is also another area where I think a lot of us spend a lot of time on the consumer front. I mean, every day we use WeChat or Lazada or any of the apps, but banks are still lagging behind. I think that's also another area on the mobility front. I think companies are spending.
Okay, Sundeep, you want to add on?
Sure, just to build on what Sundeep has been saying, and we're seeing significant activity in a number of those technologies that have already been mentioned. So cognitive blockchain specifically, I think we're going to have a little discussion on that later in some detail.
Yes.
So blockchain, artificial intelligence, the cognitive space, particularly in the wealth management space. So IBM is an enterprise company. We focus on enterprises, so large enterprises, typically such as UBS, etc. So they're B2B businesses. They're not B2C businesses to customers, and therefore they have a different requirement, a different perspective.
Right.
But what we have seen is the growth of FinTechs. Now, FinTechs, and again, we're going to discuss that later. But the FinTech growth, and I believe at the last count, there's something like 8,000 FinTech companies out there, which I suggest is most probably an underestimation of the number of companies out there. And we've segmented them into really 2 key groups, or 3/2. The first one is the guys that think they're going to disrupt the existing business space. So they're out there to disrupt. They're going direct to customers. disenfranchising the existing players in the marketplace. The second group, and I suggest they're potentially, certainly what we're seeing at the moment, potentially the more successful organisations who are partnering and becoming part of ecosystems, working with existing firms such as UBS or other large firms, and to some extent IBM, to access the customer base via an ecosystem or a partner base. And they tend to be more successful because they're seen as less disruptive.
I think we have been seeing the similar trend in Thailand as well, not so much as competitors, but more willing to collaborate, and a lot more like banks or securities company are now moving towards that direction. ก็ทั้งสองท่านนะคะก็มีวิวว่าเดิมเนี่ย spending เรื่องเทคโนโลยีเนี่ยอาจจะเป็นเรื่องของ maintenance ตัว legacy system แล้วก็ค่าใช้จ่ายของคนใช่ไหมคะตอนนี้ก็มาใช้พัฒนาเทคมากขึ้นนะคะแล้วก็เทคที่กำลังมาก็คล้ายๆที่เราได้ยินแล้วนะคะ blockchain AI ที่เป็นที่สำคัญนะคะแล้วก็คุณฟิลิปก็บอกว่าวิวเนี่ยไม่ใช่เป็น FinTech as a disruptor อย่างเดียวแต่เป็น collaborator ด้วยนะคะ Okay, so I'm gonna move on to in more details on the cool initiatives that your companies are currently exploring. For UBS, I heard that innovation and digitalization are key priorities that you are exploring and trying to integrate more to your business model, right? And you have like innovation labs and think tanks and several other initiatives. So could you kindly elaborate on the key initiatives that you are exploring, and why do you feel that it's a priority at this point, and what are the biggest focus for your company right now?
Sure. So I think, as I mentioned, 3 to 4 years back, we have realized that technology disruption is happening. So if you can't beat them, at least join them. So started to partner with many FinTech companies. So we got innovation labs in London, in Singapore. We also recently opened one in Hong Kong. So what we do there is we provide an opportunity for FinTech companies to partner with UBS. Also, we get an access to their technology at fairly early stage, and at the same time, what we also try to do is potentially also leverage them, trying to connect with our investors, because some of these FinTech companies have great ideas, but you also need to commercialize them. So we also try to not only invest directly, but also provide an opportunity for our clients to invest. But from a technology point of view, what we do at the innovation labs is that we get access to all these latest technologies. So we try to experiment them, or at least initially select some few projects within the bank. I'll go through the examples. But the other event which I was mentioning yesterday, we were at Hong Kong. We do this technology CEO summit every year, where we invite all the FinTech companies in the region, or basically the technology companies, the unlisted technology companies. We got almost like 600 to 700 CEOs, founders yesterday. And I was actually doing a panel, but I was moderating yesterday. But I mean, basically connecting ideas, sharing ideas. But in a real day-to-day life, what we are trying to do through these innovation labs is see how technologies like AI, for example, we are trying to look at use cases of AI, not just in, for example, robot advisory. I mean, I'll go through the details later, but in terms of the real-life use cases, can AI be implemented in, for example, research, what I do? Can AI be used not just in front office, but in the back office or in the middle office? Similarly, on the blockchain front, we are trying to build a ecosystem around blockchain with the utility settlement coin. Still early days, but what we are trying to bring is connect all the banks, whereby we have a cryptocurrency which is backed by physical money. So it's not the usual bitcoins or ether, but it's a utility settlement coin where every time, let's say UBS is trading with Credit Suisse or other bank, we don't have to wait for 2 to 3 days for settlement. So the underlying trade is actually backed by this utility settlement coin, which is backed by physical money. So there's a real settlement. We are actually one of the pioneers of that. Similarly, on cybersecurity, actually we are pretty aggressive. As part of my tech coverage, when I look at what are the risks companies are facing today and how they are actually prepared, it seems that most of the businesses are prepared for, let's say, terrorist attack. They're prepared for the supply chain outage. But for cybersecurity, most businesses are still not prepared. So at UBS, actually, we are aggressively spending on cybersecurity, and I think we are one of the biggest spenders, at least in terms of incremental growth in cybersecurity. So that's one area where we are spending. Then there are many other niche technologies beyond blockchain, AI, cybersecurity that we are also spending. Mobility, we are trying to change the way we generate or research or sell our ideas. Look at the way we are as consumers, we are demanding better user interface. It's no longer going to the website and downloading the research report. It needs to be driven out of mobile app with videos as well. So we're also spending a lot on this. But again, not by significantly increasing our IT budget, but being smart in the way we shift our spending from traditional areas to the new technologies.
ค่ะก็โดยสรุปก็คือพวกมีทั้ง innovation lab มีการ connect ideas กันใช่ไหมคะส่วนเทคโนโลยีเดี๋ยว AI ก็จะเล่าin details ต่อไปนะคะ blockchain ก็เป็นสิ่งที่สำคัญ cyber security ก็แม้คนอื่นยังไม่ค่อย aware แต่ทางนี้ก็ explore ค่อนข้างเยอะแล้วนะคะแล้วก็พวก mobility หรือว่าการทำ clearing settlement อะไรที่ใช้ blockchain มานะคะ Okay so what about IBM you mentioned earlier that since a lot of your clients are financial services providers. Naturally, you have to change and adapt to meet their changing needs. What are some of the key initiatives or ideas that IBM is exploring to better serve the clients as a solution provider?
Yeah, I guess I'll break that down into two main areas. One is technologies that we're bringing to market ourselves, and the other one I'll come back to in a second is where we're working with FinTech companies to develop, taking some of that technology or leveraging technology that they bring to the table as well, and then take that to customers. So some of the technologies that we're bringing to market, I think blockchain is a major focus for us at this moment in time, significant focus on blockchain. And we're seeing, whilst it's a cross-industry initiative, and we're seeing a number of initiatives in all sorts of industries, from retail to trade logistics, trade finance, etc. The financial market space has been our leading client base, pushing the boundaries of blockchain. To the point with now, I think we've got what we'd like to describe as, say, 2015, 2016 was people experimenting. We like to call it blockchain tourism. Has now moved on and developed, and we're now seeing about 10 customers who are now going to go live at the end of this year or in the first quarter of next year. So what we're, the innovators to some extent pushing the boundaries and wanting to go to market with that first mover advantage. So that's one group around blockchain. Cyber security is obviously underpins everything that we do, right. But we're leveraging cognitive technologies and trying to get insights into some of the challenges around cyber security. So we're taking an underlying technology like cognitive, we're using it in cyber security, we're using it to detect rogue behaviour, fraudulent behaviour in financial markets. We're also using it to develop insights both into product development, so how to bring a product to market, how successful that product would be, which market segment or customer segment would participate, and also for insights into maybe portfolio analysis or insights into customer behaviour patterns around how they want life cycle events, for example, in the wealth management space, to be proactive regarding products. In the second space, working with FinTechs, we've created an ecosystem around that. We've created our own ecosystem where we're pursuing FinTechs to participate with us. We've created something called the Watson Financial Services Platform. So we have a pre-built ecosystem with assets and capabilities they can leverage.
Oh, they can leverage.
So building out some of the, so they have a ability to use development tools, cloud security, APIs into some of our own products.
So facilitate them to develop faster.
Develop faster and lower cost. And also access to third parties as well. So it's an open environment. So for example, Thomson Reuters, the Dow Jones, and many others are party to the secret system. And the concept would be that they would contribute to the system. So for want of a better phrase, we've created an app store for fintechs where they can leverage underlying components to build out on top of their own capability, create something of value as a complementer, and then put that back into the marketplace and access a broader market base from the perspective of leveraging IBM. And then just finally, the other more traditional method I suggest is where we're working with small fintechs and going direct with the solution to an end customer. And an example of that is the work that we're doing on blockchain at the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, so the largest post-trade clearing organisation globally, in the US with a fintech company called Axone, where we're deploying a blockchain solution for their trade information warehouse on credit default swaps. So that's an example of direct engagement with a small fintech.
โดยสรุปก็คือมีทั้งโซลูชันที่ IBM provide มาเองให้กับcustomer ใช่ไหมคะก็มีการเอาบล็อกเชนมาใช้ตอนนี้คงได้เห็นบล็อกเชนชัดเจนขึ้นใช่ไหมคะแล้วก็มีอีกพาร์ทหนึ่งก็คือที่ไปร่วมมือกับ FinTech โดยการทำเป็นแพลตฟอร์มที่จะ facilitate ให้เขา develop เองได้ด้วยหรือว่าแบบ more traditional ก็คือจับมือกับ FinTech แล้วก็ไป provide solution ให้ลูกค้าเลยนะคะ Okay, so since you mentioned about AI earlier, let me go deeper into details on AI. Since for Thailand, for SEC Thailand, we see that AI and blockchain are two of the key changing force that will affect the services provided here. So for AI, do you feel that it's embraced by the financial services providers and how to encourage that more? And also another question, since now we kind of hear AI on like automating the processes of the financial service providers or robo-advisors, are there any other key areas that you feel AI can contribute more?
Sure. Actually, to make the concept of AI simple, what we have done actually in April 2017, I published a major report on AI. Actually, it's in public domain, so it's on UBS website. So you can actually download it and read it. It's written in plain, simple English language. And what's best is I also included interviews from leading industry experts. So we got one interview from IBM as well on that in that report. Now, what banks are doing today, and also UBS in particular, I think people always refer to AI, okay, robo-advisory. I think it's beyond robo-advisory. So, for example, earlier I was alluding to research how AI can be used in terms of idea generation. My typical job, I need to read, given my coverage, I need to read research reports or multiple newspaper articles or read blogs as well, read tweets as well. I mean, nowadays you have to follow people on tweets, Twitter as well, right? So what AI can do is basically, automate a lot of this stuff, right? I mean, I don't have to read everything. It could actually generate a summary or, maybe an abstract or a report for me where, I can just quickly scan, and if I want more in details, I can actually go through that. Similarly, underwriting or structuring of products, where I can see the use of AI. The way it works today is that if somebody wants to have a equity-linked note or a structured product, I think there are many banks involved, and there is cross-communication which takes maybe at least 1 day or 2 days to actually generate a product. So for example, if you are negative or if you are positive on markets, for example, you would rather want to play indirectly through the structured products, you can actually invest in structured products, but today it takes 1 to 2 days to generate that. But with AI, actually you can generate within a few minutes. So that's one area where actually, or even in terms of insurance, I mean, we do it, may not necessarily apply to all the security companies, but their claims management, insurance underwriting, I think there are many areas where AI can be used. And I think the biggest upside could be in terms of how AI can fix processes. I was earlier telling that 2/3 of your spending is happening on maintenance, and a lot of this hiring in the last 2 to 3 years actually happened on the compliance front. I think if there is any department in the bank which is safe or which has seen growth is compliance, because you need to deal with regulators, right? A lot of, I don't know whether KYC or filing a lot of documents.
Yeah.
But I think that with AI, a lot of this middle office and back office jobs can be automated. I'm not saying that those jobs are at a risk. The nature of those jobs will change in the future, but I think that's one area where actually even on the KYC front, we are actually exploring how we can use AI. Regulation, compliance is one area where I think in the future it will change, where we can automate a lot of stuff. Similarly, we are also looking at how AI can help the front office staff, not just robot advisory, but also in terms of providing alerts. For example, the way current stop loss or any of these profit-taking tools which we have I think are outdated, and AI can actually help them. So we are actually exploring, still early days. It will take some time, but we are definitely exploring. We also have some official press announcements in the last 2 to 3 months how we are actually going to use AI in some of these initiatives. Smart Wealth is one of them which we introduced at least in Europe, where we are leveraging AI in terms of our wealth management. We are also using AI across the bank in terms of fixing the processes.
ก็มีหลาย area ที่สามารถ explore AI ได้นะคะไม่ใช่การ moderator หรือ automate process อย่างเดียวใช่ไหมคะวันนี้ก็มีเรื่องเอามาช่วยทำ research หรือว่า shorten time ในการออก product มากขึ้นนะคะแล้วก็ regtech ใช่ไหมคะเอามาใช้ตอบโจทย์ regulator ต่างๆนะคะเป็นทั้ง middle office ด้วยหรือว่า front office ก็เอามาใช้ alert ด้วยเพราะฉะนั้นก็มีศักยภาพที่จะนำไปใช้ได้กว้างไกลมากๆนะคะก็เป็นอะไรที่น่าจะทดลอง embrace ดูนะคะfor you, let's discuss blockchain. Since blockchain, almost everyone sees all the potential of blockchain. You mentioned that previously it's kind of like blockchain tourists, just exploring what we can do with blockchain. But now we are moving on to having real use cases. We also heard that many people don't want to be the first to, use blockchain. They are not sure of the technologies. Like the mindset is maybe not ready for blockchain. So, what do you think on that? Do you think blockchain can be further embraced, or if there are any obstacles blocking the potential use of blockchain, how could we address that?
Sure. I mean, I personally think that blockchain is gaining momentum, and we're seeing that in the market space. There's a number of engagements that are out there in the public domain. There's a number of engagements that aren't in the public domain, and they don't wish to be made public for competitive reasons, to the point around first mover advantage, for example. So the blockchain activity is quite strong. I think the challenges are quite complex. In terms of advantages, the first mover advantage is frankly around creating the network. So for example, I mentioned DTCC earlier. At the end of that project, they'll have 2,500 members connected to their network. So they'll have all the leading financial institutions connected to a blockchain network where they're offering a service that gives them some value from a tactical perspective. But from a strategic perspective, they have that network where they can continue to add value services, and potentially as the technology matures, they can add additional value-added services, be it clearing and settlement, be it reference data, be it KYC services, whatever the answer is, they have that network connected. And more importantly, they have the experience of managing that network. As we're seeing the technology become generally available, more mature, etc., the challenges are now moving on to how to run a distributed network in production. And it's not necessarily a technical challenge, and I don't want to diminish the technical challenges because it's a new technology, there's lots of first-of-a-kind projects out there, but operating a distributed network brings very different challenges than we've had previously. So in terms of synchronization of all the applications across a distributed environment is a challenge. Who manages the rules? Who imposes the rules? How do new members join? How are new members offboarding? sorry, not new members, members offboarded. So there's significant challenges around the operational side that people are now thinking through and resolving. But in particular, the areas that we see, the biggest inhibitors, or three areas that we see inhibiting progress. One is the business case. So it's a true statement the business case for any new project is important. The second one is market convention. Now, for example, in clearing and settlement, the reduction in the trade cycle from T15 for fixed income example in Thailand to T0, or T2 to T0 for equities. There are significant challenges to some participants in the market space that benefit from that settlement cycle. So, for example, in Malaysia and Singapore, there's organisations that allow people to effectively trade without putting up any cash. And therefore, if cash is on demand on T0, that ability to transact and see the market and make some profit from an arbitrage opportunity in the market space goes away. And finally, the one that I suggest that is very important for the sponsor of the event here today is regulation. The financial markets are heavily regulated, and regulation is clearly a major challenge. They have to make sure that it's reliable, robust, and proven before rolling out the technology, and it still has to meet the regulations that are in place. But I would articulate the view that regulation, and you may have a view on this, is technology agnostic, and therefore providing a mix of requirements is going to be okay.
Actually, I have a question to Phil. In terms of how you see blockchain, do you see blockchain as something that would maximize revenues, provide them new revenue opportunities, or do you see it as more as a cost reduction initiative, something that would fix inefficiencies? How do you see blockchain?
Clearly, the starting points I suggest at the moment in the post-trade world, we're seeing significant interest in post-trade world and asset servicing. So that's really cost reduction and asset efficiency. But to some of the points around automation and robotic process automation, I suggest some of those projects need to take a more strategic view, because blockchain, once we have a single record on the blockchain, that's the single version of the truth and immutable, some of the reconciliation processes that we're automating will go away. There'll no longer be a need for those processes to exist. So therefore, some of the engagements that people are looking at may be redundant in 2 or 3 years, frankly. I think there are significant revenue opportunities around blockchain. People are beginning to explore that. There's certainly a revenue opportunity around managing the business network. As was mentioned, where IBM is focused on enterprise blockchain, so private networks, not open networks, and there's a significant difference between those private networks and public networks. And there's an opportunity to monetize that network and managing that network. And also some of the ability to bring new products and services to market on the blockchain that was not historically possible, and differentiate yourself from your competitors. So we're beginning to see people now to start to look at the revenue side as opposed to the cost optimization efficiency side.
ค่ะของฝั่งบล็อกเชนนี้ก็มี first mover advantage นะคะแต่ว่าก็จะต้องมี network ที่แข็งแกร่งแล้วก็สามารถ leverage ในการพัฒนาแอปพลิเคชันหรือว่า leverage on network นั้นได้ซึ่งคุณธิริก็มองว่ามี3 obstacle หลักๆหนึ่งก็คือ business case ที่แท้จริงมีหรือเปล่าใช่ไหมคะ2คือ market convention หรือว่าคนที่เคยอยู่ใน process เดิมจะแบบไม่โอเคกับการนำสิ่งใหม่ๆนี้มาใช้แล้วจะตัดเขาออกไปหรือเปล่าใช่ไหมคะและอันที่3ก็คือ regulation จะต้อง flexible เพียงพอนะคะที่จะรองรับเทคโนโลยีเช่นนี้ได้นะคะค่ะแล้วก็ก็อาจจะมีค่ะก็อาจจะมีการต้องลงทุนเพิ่มหรือว่าอาจจะต้องมาดูว่าบาง process ก็อาจจะไม่ดีแล้วใช่ไหมคะในอนาคตแต่ว่าก็มีตรงที่สามารถมี revenue model เกิดขึ้นใหม่ได้นะคะ since we are quite pressed on time let me jump to the final question and we will probably have like 5 minutes for questions from the floor. So this is for both of you. So for the companies that would like to embrace innovation, blockchain, AI, where can they start and what would be the key imperative that they have to consider for them to be winners from this technology?
So go first. Sure. I think when we started this investing in some of these emerging technologies, I know initially there's a lot of pushback. I think you need to upscale your skills, the existing skill sets which we are. I mean, Phil was just mentioning in terms of how there are some actually inhibitors for blockchain adoption where not many people actually have the right skills to use it. But I think when you want to adopt or upgrade to some of these new technologies, what I can say is make sure that I think you have the right skills, otherwise it could backfire. Second is also financial commitment. I think it should not be seen as a one-off project, should be seen as something strategic in nature. I know from a quarter to quarter, if you're a public listed company, there's always a pressure in terms of investor expectations, but I think investment into IT, it should be more strategic. If you see how the technology companies are investing, they're not investing for one quarter, I mean, they're investing for multiple decades, and probably that's the reason why today they're reaping the benefits. So I think you should have the same, the culture, what the tech companies are adopting. Similarly, I think investing in technology should also be flexible in the future, where I know in terms of managing the talent or managing the processes, I think the existing, again, Phil was earlier mentioning in terms of how people find it difficult when they move on to the new systems, but what we can tell is basically you need to be flexible. What we have done at UBS, one example is that we have noticed that we've got thousands of apps, applications, and we realized that if you want to move on to the next technologies, I think we need to clean up first. So what we have done, and we are in the process, and you'll get to hear it in the coming weeks, is that we try to build everything on a single architecture. So we have cleaned up everything. Everything is fully integrated. So we don't have those thousands of apps which are nowhere connected. So we are trying to also clean up. So maybe that's also a suggestion for you. Try to fix up your legacy systems and basically invest on a more strategic level.
ค่ะก็ทางคุณสันดีก็บอกมี4 key things นะคะเรื่องแรกก็คือเรื่องมี right skill set นะคะเรื่องที่2คือ investment ก็ต้องเป็นเชิง strategic มากขึ้นไม่ใช่เป็นแบบว่า one off project นะคะแล้วก็จะต้องพยายาม clean up legacy system ของตัวเองใช่ไหมคะก็ต้องมี flexibility ที่จะเปิดรับหรือว่าadapt ไปกับ change ได้นะคะโอเค How about you, Philip?
I mean, I'll just focus on blockchain as an example, and I think the utopian view of blockchain in the financial market space would be where an asset is issued, traded, cleared, settled, and asset serviced on the blockchain. That would be utopia, the perfect world. I mean, and we'll most probably get there. It's really when we get there in terms of not in. Most organisations are looking at entry points. Where is their differentiator to get into that space, and where's the best value for money, their business case, where they can optimise their own capabilities. But just to echo Sundeep's point, what we're seeing is typical challenges in any first-of-a-kind technology. So we're typically asked, where are you in production? Well, not many places, because it's emerging technology, it's new. You're going to be one of the first if you're going to adopt this. The second one is the skill set, the skill shortage. Skills are in short supply, particularly when there's a significant explosion of demand in a certain technology. Those skills tend to either get scarcer or they become more expensive, typically more expensive. So you can obtain the skills. Most people aren't comfortable with the price they have to pay for those skills. The other ones I've mentioned around regulation and business conventions are out there and most probably only present in any new technology. So it is this. There are various challenges to rolling out the technology, but what we do see, and we've done some surveys with the Economist Intelligence Unit around successful companies, and what they do differently is innovate. So innovation is extremely important to successful companies that outperform. So the innovation does bring value, not only in its base business case, there's a broader brand reputation, etc. to be cognizant of. And also in the blockchain world, as I mentioned, the network. Having customers on your network and having that first mover advantage, I suggest is extremely important, because we talk a lot about, we get a lot of questions around interoperability. There's many protocols in the blockchain world out there. If I adopt this particular version, how will I interoperate with another network, etc. So unfortunately, we live in a very competitive world where consensus is hard, where people potentially see revenue streams. And that challenge around a new network growing out based on a standard will take some time to settle down. So we will have a plethora of different networks out there for some time. But once you establish a network and have your customers on board, there's significant value. It will let you willing to change to another network and go through that process. But would they rather see new value-added services coming from your network and therefore come to you as a customer and say, if you were to add this service to your network, I do choose that service, and therefore that would be benefit. So I think there is significant value in that first mover advantage, and also being an innovator generally.
ค่ะก็เหมือน reiterate point เดิมนะคะก็คือเป็นเรื่องของว่ามี first mover advantage ใช่ไหมคะแต่ว่าก็ leverage on network ที่สร้างขึ้นด้วยเพราะว่าถ้าสร้าง network ที่แข็งแกร่งได้คนก็คงไม่ได้อยากเปลี่ยนใช่ไหมคะก็มีเรื่องว่าแต่ว่าก็มีว่าเวนที่จะไปถึงตรงนั้นได้เพราะว่าถ้าเราเป็น first mover เรื่องเทคโนโลยีเราก็อาจจะต้องเป็น leader ใช่ไหมคะแล้วก็เรื่อง skill set ที่บอกว่าขาดแคลนแล้วก็ต้อง pricey แหละถ้าจะ attract คนที่มี skill set ที่ถูกต้องมานะคะ regulation ก็เป็นอีกประเด็นหนึ่งนะคะ okay so any questions from the floor I think we have time for like 1 or 2 quick questions so if there are any just raise your hand and then someone will run to you with the microphone anybody okay so I think then our panel must be very clear. Okay. So if there are no questions, please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists who flew all the way to join us today, Mr. Sundeep and Mr. Philip. Please join me in thanking them.